Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast. Glad to have you along on this Tuesday morning. The podcast presented by our good friends at Exterior Home Solutions. Be sure and give them a call for all your exterior home needs, from decking to siding, windows, roofing, whatever it needs. That's at Exterior Home Solutions. You can give them a call at 865-524-5888. Exterior Home Solutions. They put the East Tennessee community first. They have for a long time. They've been great friends of ours here at Volquest, so be sure and check them out. I'm Brent Hubbs, along with Austin Price, Grant Ramey, and Rob Lewis. Glad to have you along with us on this cold Tuesday. Hope everybody's staying warm. And speaking of warm, let's start on the hoops side of things with Dalton Connect. Rob and Grant, you guys have seen a lot of Tennessee basketball through the years. Put in perspective Dalton Connect's performance in Athens, Georgia, and just the week he had as well.
Man, I mean, when you talk about the week he had as well, the level he's playing at, Grant Williams was the two-time SEC Player of the Year. I mean, he's there. I mean, Chris Lofton was, the most prolific, scorer, best player, I probably have seen it at Tennessee. I mean, I think Dalton is playing it. Now Chris did it for 3 years and then did it after he had cancer. So, I mean, I don't want to dismiss that, but I mean, I'm just talking about at the level Dalton is playing at. It's a smaller sample size. He's there, and Ron Saleh was an SEC Player of the Year. I mean, Dalton is, I think at that level, he's as good as anybody I've seen covering a Tennessee team.
Tennessee put out a bunch of notes on Dalton Sunday, and I published them on the site. I can't recite them off the top of my head, but he's joining lists that include Bernard King and Allen Houston and Chris Lofton and Grant Williams and Kevin Punter Jr. doing stuff that only those type of names have done. I think that puts into perspective not only how good he is, but he's done it in such a short amount. He's only played 16 games at Tennessee. He's only played 4 road games, and he's averaging 31.3 on the road, and he's shooting 61% from the field and 48% from the three-point line. So not only is it huge for Tennessee because they need him to perform that way, to be the best basketball team they can be, but for him to bounce back from, 2 or 3 weeks where he really didn't do anything. He struggled. You were wondering kind of how he was going to react to that, how he was going to adjust to other defenses adjusting to him, and the newness wearing off of him after that first month where he was playing so well. So to see him, he only had 2 in the first half at Mississippi State, and he kind of looks like that same old guy. And then he came out with 26 in Starkville in the second half and did what he did at Georgia, 13 points in the final 8 minutes to kind of carry them to that win. It's a huge, huge development. He's doing stuff that's rarefied air for Tennessee basketball.
I thought when Hubbs was cold to warm, I thought he was going to go with an NBA Jam reference, Rob. It's one of those type of, he was 0 for 4 in Starkville. He made that first, and then when he made that second, you're like, watch out, because you could just see, the light come on. And
then in Georgia, it was like, watch out from the very start.
Yeah.
There was no little, but to Grant's point about his law, Grant, I can't remember if it was what 3 games it was, but 3, if it included Norfolk State or not. But there was a 3-game stretch to close the new year right there. He scored 15 total points in 3 games. And you're thinking, not necessarily people have figured him out, but, he's got to make some adjustments. People are getting up into him. The space is hard to come by. But, that was, an illusion, obviously, because I've written and said, I think he's the favorite for SEC Player of the Year right now.
Well, go ahead. Before I let you jump in, when Rick was out on Ball Club Confidential, he talked about, coaching him a certain way. And he told him before, he goes, when it all started easy for him, I told him there's going to be moments where it's not easy. And that was right in there when we taped that was right around that time frame that Rob's talking about. And, clearly, even at the first game of the SEC play against Ole Miss, he only took 6 shots. He was 3 of 6. He had 8 points. But all of a sudden you start seeing them be a little more assertive. Again, just a super deep team. Meshack comes through. Adu had a big 20-point performance against Ole Miss. Connect leads them, but he's all of a sudden seeing, I don't have to play perfect. There are other guys that can step up, and I think that's taken a little bit of pressure off him, which to me has probably helped him.
For me, Grant, Rob, and Austin too, for that matter, what stood out to me about the game in Athens, Georgia, and I didn't look at his second half stats against Mississippi State other than the scoring, is they ran so much through him and he took care of the basketball. There was a stretch early in December where I just thought he was super loose with the ball. He was kind of a turnover machine. And for him to have the ball the way he did down the stretch in that second half against Georgia, and basically they just ran everything through him. He was playing point forward, for the most part. For him to take care of the basketball like that, I thought that was kind of a quiet major development if he can tighten up that area a little bit, because that was one concern I had with him, heading into the Christmas break was just, you come dribbling across the lane, everybody's sitting there waiting for that thing, it felt like, Grant, and that was not the case against Georgia on Saturday.
No, and there were, I believe, if my math is right, 14 ranked teams that lost 15 games last week, and 12 of those games were on the road. And Tennessee going from up 14, up 42-28 with 4 minutes left in the second half, didn't score the rest of the way the first half, to go down 11 the second half. When that happens on the road in college basketball, it's completely flipped. The momentum's all against you. It's all one-sided, and you might as well pack up and go home. So for him to play the way he did in the second half in that environment, he played great in the first half, but for him to answer the way he did, for Georgia to be dumb enough to talk trash to him and Zakai like they did for basically 40 minutes, to kind of for him to answer on that stage the way he did is makes it even bigger, because 36 points is huge. But to turn that around and to somehow win that basketball game and not go 0 for 2 on the road last week and to split games, it's huge, because it rarely happens across the country, regardless of teams.
And Rob, it's drawing praise from guys like Kevin Durant. We saw that on Twitter. Other people watching that are just basketball fans. They're watching him and they're going, "Who is this dude?" And all of a sudden, it's like boom, 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 and he just looks like such a. He called him a dog. I would just say an alpha. I mean, he looks like such an alpha on the floor at all times.
Yeah, man, he is wildly confident in himself. Don't you think, Grant? I mean, but it's not cocky, at all. It's just, it's kind of like he can't imagine, not being. I mean, and I think it comes from, putting the work in, obviously the success, but and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, but he's kind of like a basketball robot. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that I think that's one of the reasons he's so good on the road. I don't think that stuff bothers him. I mean, I think I don't think it's a matter of filtering it out. I just don't think it occurs to him to be, worried about crowd noise in the environment. I think he's just there to hoop. I mean, if you talk to him and you get, I mean, it's just basketball. I mean, if you're looking to get some kind of, deep analysis for, how he's doing or the adjustment he's made for Northern Colorado, you ain't getting it. I mean, he's just like, this is basketball. It's what I do. He's not, I don't think he's particularly surprised by what he's done.
With that, we were joking post game in Athens, like his words to points ratio is like 1 to 1.
that's a good one.
And no one appreciates that more than myself. I think this is just the same thing that he's always done. Like, he's had to prove himself. He had to go to JUCO. He had to go to Northern Colorado, and he's averaged 20 a game. It feels like his entire career. He's always been a scorer. Nothing he's doing now is new. He's just doing it on a different stage and having to prove himself at a different level. And I think that's the quiet confidence. I think that's like Rob's talking about, basketball robot, where he just goes out and performs. I think he's just doing what he's always done.
How much does this? I mean, and I'm not taking anything away from Santi, and I'm not taking anything away from Josiah and some of those other veterans, but it feels like the personality of Dalton, as you're talking about, and the personality of Zakai kind of mirror each other in some ways, right? Both underdogs, both overachievers, and both just hoop, right? Just I don't care where we're playing at. I don't care if we're playing outside, inside, on a rubber floor, concrete, asphalt, rocks, whatever. Let's just go play. How much will that help carry this team through the grind moving forward? That it doesn't appear like Zakai and Dalton have a lot of roller coaster emotion to them. Is that fair or not fair?
I think it's super fair, and I think it's also. I mean, Hubbard. I think this, to single those two guys out, I think it really, kind of personifies not just his team, but this head coach. I mean, you read this stuff about, Rick's had, he coached Kevin Durant. He's had 1 million first-round draft picks and all that. man, to me, I mean, the players that he does the best with are dudes like that, like dudes like Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield, a no-star 5'7" point guard from Long Island that absolutely nobody wanted. A kid that was 6 foot in high school and single A basketball in Colorado, that went to JUCO. I mean, I think that had to work for absolutely everything that they had. I mean, I think Rick, it's probably better to say those kind of kids do well with Rick rather than Rick does well with those kind of kids. But I just, I think that mindset you're talking about, Brent, that mental makeup, I mean, it really meshes with Coach. And to your point about Santi and Josiah, for a few weeks in December, I was like, man, these guys have got to get it going, or this team's just not going to get their ceiling. And now you look at how it's constructed with Dalton and Zakai leading the way, like you're talking about, Hubbard. I don't think it matters. I mean, if they're going to get to the Final Four, yeah, Josiah and Santi are going to have to, be big time at some point. But no, I mean, they're going to be a really good team with Dalton and Zakai leading the way.
I think the biggest thing in having Josiah out, we've got Volquest Confidential coming out next Monday with him, kind of a deep dive on him. And he talks about, like, the one thing that Santi has impressed upon him is he's more than just a basketball player. And Josiah's gravitated towards that too. Whereas I think with Ziegler and Connect, that's all they do, right? Josiah said when he left taping, he's like, I'm going to the gym. I know Dalton will be there. Like, that's all he does, So, I mean, I think to Rob's point, like, yeah, you have to have Josiah and Santi, be key contributors. But I think they're very comfortable being the Robin to the Batman, right? Like, they don't want to be Batman. They want to be the guy that's, that third option, that second option. Then you got a player like Meshack who just literally does whatever the team needs. You got a Waka. I mean, like, this team is constructed, and obviously Adu's playing well as well. But I mean, this team is constructed in a way, Grant, that, like, there are a lot of just Rick Barnes guys, right? I mean, Meshack's the ultimate Rick Barnes guy, Waka, Rick Barnes guy. And, to be honest with you, after talking to Josiah, it'd be hard not to be excited about the young freshman. The name escapes me. Cam
Carr.
Cam Carr said that, Josiah told me the story. Like, he had a rough day in practice the other day. Rick was all over him, but he's like, the kid just gets back up and wants more. He wants more of that. And that's what the kind of kids Rick likes. He doesn't like the ones that kind of, shy away from getting barked at. Like, he wants them to get mad and to get motivated.
Yeah, and when Rick's going at you in practice, that's a good thing. That's a compliment because he sees something in you. He's going at you for a reason. When you're getting ignored in practice is when you know you have problems. And I think Saturday in Athens was a little bit of glimpse into kind of what this team can be. And there's going to be lulls, there's going to be runs and stuff that go for you, go against you. But for them to grit that one out and to find a way to win that game, they're going to be really tough to beat at home, regardless of who they play, as they have been the last handful of years under Rick Barnes. And they're going to be tough to put away on the road because they're going to be capable of going on those runs that we've seen. And that's because of Dalton. That's because of Zakai. I don't expect those two guys to play, the rest of the season like they have the last couple games. But I also don't expect Josiah to be as bad as he's been kind of scoring the last couple of games. Or Santi. I think Santi, more than anybody, has had to try to adjust to what it's like with Dalton because they've ran so much offense through him the last 2 years, where he's been the priority was to try to get Santi an open 3-point look. And I think he's still kind of struggling to adjust and settle in and figure out where he is. And I do think, AP, I agree. Jonas can go off. Jemiah's a much better 3-point catch and shoot guy. He's going to play that usual brand of defense. This entire team's going to play that usual brand of defense. I think they're 20th in offensive efficiency right now in KenPom, which is as high as they've been probably since Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield, that team in 18-19. And they haven't slacked off on defense either. They're number 4, I think, there. They were leaving Athens. So it's a well-rounded team. It's a deep team. If they show up, they can go on a run for sure.
Rob, I want to ask you. You mentioned a month and a half ago, you thought Santi would have the biggest adjustment of anybody with Connect. Not that he didn't like him, but just trying to get into a groove of things offensively, particularly after missing the start, going home with the family situation there. I'm curious now that Connect has got a bigger body of work. Does this team and does Rick Barnes, do they do anything differently offensively to avoid the 4 and 5 minute lulls? You know what I'm saying? That does Rick go, okay, and hey, we're going to run something hard for Dalton to get to the free throw line or something like that? Does he do that earlier to try to eliminate some of those lulls? Because I guess that's the one thing that you look at this team and go, you know what, that can bite them. That's something they can't overcome if they have a 5-minute second half lull where there's no offense in there. Does Rick have a quicker, and does this team have a quicker switch to get into something specific for a player than we've seen in the past? It's, Grant, since Grant was here.
Small sample size, but I mean, just looking at the second half in Georgia, it's not run offense through Dalton. It's like give Dalton the ball in the backcourt and have him up, and work from there. And that's what I think we've seen some of that, but then we saw it possession after possession in Athens, and it kept working. So I don't know if Coach looks at that and goes, hey, if we've been 4 possessions without a bucket, Dalton bring it up and force it, but. To me, that seemed like a pretty quick fix. But you're talking about the lulls. I mean, basketball's weird, and you can point to probably a lot of things like this. But man, they had 22 points in the first half at Mississippi State and 25 points in the last 8 minutes at Georgia on Saturday. I mean, and that wasn't all about running through Dalton, but man, he had a heavy hand in it.
Well, and I mean, it was 25 points or whatever it was, Grant, and it wasn't standing behind the 3-point line putting up a bunch of stuff, right? Like it was a different type of 25 points. It was cashing in big time at the free throw line. I mean, it was straight line driving to the hoop, right? And playing inside the arc, which is, at one point you thought, man, they're going to shoot 63s today at the pace that they're going right now. And then down the stretch, it was head down, go to the rim, which again, I think that's how you stop those 5 and 6 minute lulls as well.
I think if you see consistent production from Dalton and not these 2 or 3 game stretches where he doesn't score but 7 or 8 or 2 points or whatever, if he's pretty consistently productive, it's a completely different offense. Because, like, I go back to March in that Florida Atlantic game, they got down like 8 in the second half. They might as well have been down 80. It felt like nobody's going to be able to get to the rim. Nobody's going to be able to hit a shot. Olivier went off against Duke and had 27 or whatever, and then you looked up in the second half against Florida Atlantic, and you're like, where is he? Like, what's going on? You needed somebody in that moment that was going to attack the rim, that was going to create their own offense, was going to do whatever they had to do to get them back in that game. And that's what Dalton was Saturday at Georgia. He's the guy that's going to drive. He's the guy that's going to bring the ball up the court, and there's 2 guys go under a screen, and he shoots a deep 3, and that's the go-ahead points, and that's the dagger. And he kind of has thrived in those moments on the road. Now, if he continues to do that consistently, it feels completely different. And I think Josiah's going to be fine because we've seen a lot more good than bad from him. I would assume at some point Santi's going to get back to scoring like we've seen him in the past. Jonas is better. They got to be more. They got to be more consistently productive down low, defend better, not foul, stuff like that. But if you've got a guy that you can get the ball and get out of the way, you're going to be a tough out in March if you continue to produce offensively and play your usual brand of defense, because what they've been missing since Grant Williams is that guy to dump the ball down there and let him go to work.
All right, big week for Tennessee. You got Florida at home tonight, and you got Alabama at home. What are you looking for this week? Quickly, you guys, and also, what are your thoughts on the SEC through 3 games of conference play? Where are we at in this thing?
I think it sets up great the schedule for Tennessee, and that's why I don't want to make too much out of the winning the 3rd game of the year in league play at Georgia, but man, if it really changed the narrative, coming back in the second half. You lose that, you drop 2 on the road, 1 to the Georgia would have been a bad loss when they're outside the top 70 in Ken Palm, but instead, you get that. I don't think there's a lot of shame in losing to Mississippi State, but the upside is you split on the road. Now you come home for 2, you have an open date, you go to Vandy, which should be very winnable, and then South Carolina comes here. I mean, you're looking at 4 games before you go to Kentucky that you're going to be a pretty heavy favorite in. So I mean, that's another reason why that second half comeback at Athens, I think was really big. I don't think it would have rattled the team so much, but the outside narrative would have turned somewhat negative.
Well, at some point you got to keep pace too to keep for in conference play, right? I mean, you don't need those 2 games that come back to rear their ugly head later in the year. You're trying to be that 1 seed going into the SEC tournament.
Yeah, I don't look at. I mean, I was gonna say I know Alabama lost to Mississippi State on Saturday, but other teams are going to lose, and that wasn't just a god awful loss. Georgia would have been a different tenor.
You need to go 4-0 over these next 4 because you got 3 at home. Alabama's going to be tough because Alabama's 3-0 in SEC play. The analytics love them. Auburn 3-0, but that's later down the road. They're really going to be tough too. But I mean, Florida, Alabama, at Vandy, South Carolina. You need to go 4-0. You need the 3 toughest or the 2 toughest games on that stretch is at home. So you need to be really good at home, really hard to beat at home, and you need to go to Vandy and beat the worst team in the league because they're the worst team in the league. And then that sets you up at what 5-1.
Going to Kentucky,
right? 6-1 going to
6-1.
Kentucky in SEC play. And yeah, if you're going to be in that top 4 conversation and try to get that double bye in the SEC tournament, you better not waste opportunities, especially at home.
Well,
and I mean, for Tennessee, I mean, you're talking about trying to get a number 1 seed too in the Big Dance,
right.
And a loss at Georgia, in the grand scheme of things, is not that bad. But when you start, crunching the numbers, and as fine of the line is going to be for seeding purpose on Selection Sunday, that's when it would hurt you.
Yeah, no doubt. And what we know about this league is a lot of people are going to beat each other up in this league. We've seen that just through 3 games. So it's going to be exactly what you thought it was going to be, a league that's pretty deep, got a chance for 8 or 9 tournament teams, and a league that's going to beat up on each other quite a bit. Tennessee back at home, big week this week. We'll have full coverage for you at Volquest.com. There's plenty of other things going on campus, including some more recruiting. We got a junior day coming up. We think. We got lots of stuff coming up. We're going to talk about it all coming up here on the Volquest.com podcast presented by our good friends at Exterior Home Solutions.
Life happens, and damage to your home can be extremely stressful. That's why it's important to find someone who offers efficient, quality work with financing options. Exterior Home Solutions, they value not only family, but community. And they're who I call when life happens, and you should too.
Be sure and give Exterior Home Solutions a call for any of your exterior needs in East Tennessee. They'll be more than happy to take care of you. Tennessee gets a midnight commitment in the transfer portal. They're going to get a late visitor in the transfer portal. We've got coaching changes prompting more people to go into the transfer portal. And you've got a little 25 recruiting going on. Austin Price, lots of stuff happening. Let's start with the midnight transfer tied in from Alabama. What surprised you? What do you make of that one? And run. Go. Take off.
Well, Miles Kitselman, came to town. Tennessee looking to add depth to that room. Started his career at JUCO. Is a 1-for-1 as of now. Now, he did play 4 regular season games in junior college and then played a postseason game. I think there's a path to win an appeal there to get another year, but that's down the line. Right now, you got to look at him as a 1-for-1. He helps add depth to that room. When you think about Ethan Davis, when you think about Holden Stays, because you really need more than just those 2, right? I mean, it's unrealistic to think, the Harrison kid's coming in here and playing as a true freshman. And so you needed to add another piece. So they get Stays back in December. That was big. And then to be able to get Miles Kitselman, someone who is, again, a bigger body, a good blocker, don't know about his pass catching just because they didn't use him in that role. He may be better than people think. We'll see. Either way, a nice, solid addition for Alec Abelin in that room. Obviously, he already got Jack Vander Lorsair, the 2025, who will be in town for the junior day coming up on Saturday, providing there is a junior day with all the snow, coming up this weekend. But the tight end rooms kind of went from really kind of like, ooh, what's going on here, to like, you feel pretty decent about it at this point. So like a nice solid addition in Kitselman.
Well, they got some bodies. They've all just got to learn the offense, and we'll see what.
No, that's right. And McCallum Castles talked about that at the end of the bowl game, that Holden Stays asked him during December, how long did it take you to pick it up? And he said, spring's big. It took, by the end of spring, I had a good feel. But early on, head is swimming because, again, Holden Stays is going from running 1 play every 5 minutes at Notre Dame to playing 1 play every 3 or 4 seconds here. I mean, like it's just a different feel. So just kind of getting the grasp of it, that's a great point, Hubs, will be big this spring for both those kids.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with those guys, but there are bodies to work with that weren't there. You got a lot more bodies in the transfer portal now with the coaching changes and the fact that you got the 30-day window for the kids at Arizona that's just gotten started. You got Washington, you got Alabama. This is the interesting challenge, I think, Grant, for coaches out there of just managing those numbers. And do you panic and take somebody, or do you get caught up in the, hey, we'll wait, somebody will come along, and you pass on somebody you might have wished you'd have taken a flyer on or taken a chance on in the portal. It's really an interesting kind of strategy on what to do. with all the bodies out there as a coach, because you can always have a little buyer's remorse, right?
Yeah, I was having this conversation with friends the other day. I think what I would be doing as a college coach right now is be looking at these 8 or whatever it is NFL openings and begging for one of those, because of that roster management and because of that, trying to decide, do I wait? Do I take somebody early in the portal because I can get them then, or do I wait until, here it is January whatever, and Alabama came open, and now Washington came open, and now Arizona came open, and it feels like the carousel is completely restarting with these 30-day windows. With there's obviously a lot of talent on those rosters. College coaches might be overpaid, or that conversation might have happened in the past. But now with December and now with January, trying to manage these rosters and trying to re-recruit your own players, and the NIL and the portal era. I mean, I don't blame Jim Harbaugh for being interested in Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers because of how difficult that balance is, Hubs, that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's hard, AP. I mean, how do you balance it? I mean, where is that? I mean,
you don't. There's no balance. I mean, I mean, seriously, like, you don't get a moment's peace. So I mean, yeah, they get paid $9 million. I'd gladly take $9 million. I'm not going to lie. I would deal with the little off time and the
I'd give it a shot.
But I mean, it's still one of those things where, like, yeah, they're getting paid a king's ransom, but like, there is not a day that goes by that they're not dealing with some kind of like teenage drama. I mean, like, in a lot of ways, they're like high school coaches from a standpoint of like, or high school teachers, that they deal with daily drama from, younger people. And like, it's different dramas, right? And no one's the same. Like, it's not like it's the same drama over and over again. Every day is different, and it's always something different. But it's a challenge. And so, like, you're trying to balance these things. And I mean, let's face it. I mean, like, you don't think that some schools are already looking at Michigan going, who can we pluck off that roster? Oh, do you know that guy? You went to the high school with him. Call him and see if he wants to come here if Jim Harbaugh leaves. And then you pick up a phone. The player calls their old teammate. Hey, man, you want to come here to Ohio State? I mean, I'm just throwing out team names, right? None of that's officially happening. But like, that's going on all over college football. I mean, like, I talked to multiple kids that transferred that told me that they were hearing from schools 2 and 3 months ago. And so, like, it's one of those, it's just, you have to recruit your own roster, recruit other rosters. It's not enviable.
Well, and you can't control the third party and the former teammates and guys.
Yep.
I mean, you can't do anything about it. So, Austin, with all that's going on, how much more movement do you see Tennessee making in terms of additions from the transfer portal? You think they're obviously, we know the hurt, they want to get Hurd and try to get the offensive tackle position solidified. But where else? I mean, the Stanford defensive lineman is going to come in for a visit. How much more movement do you think there is for Tennessee in terms of trying to get additions to the roster?
Well, they'd love to add Jackson Moy, the defensive tackle from Stanford, who was really slated to go to Washington until DeBoer went to Alabama. And then now I think Tennessee probably is the favorite to land it. Now, again, big visit this weekend. We'll see how it goes. But that's something, where Tennessee gets another Polynesian kid into the program that just adds to that, kind of building it back up a little bit. I think they'd love to add an offensive guard. And so we'll see what they do there. And then after that, we'll just see. I mean, if somebody that's a really good player could fall in Tennessee's lap, they're not turning them down. And, and I see all the posts on the board. Well, we'll have to lose one if we had this guy. Because, I mean, you don't know the number. Like, I don't know the number. They've got all that figured out. The number always is moving around. So, it's one of those things where, like, in a perfect world, I think Tennessee could add 2 to 3 more and be okay. But, again, I think it's got to be right position, right? I think offensive guard, obviously everybody's kind of, penciling in Lance Hurd to play the other tackle spot opposite John Campbell. And then, if they can get the Moy kid, they'd be thrilled. Because, again, much like Hurd, Moy would definitely be here for 25, which would be a nice get for the interior part of the defensive line for not this coming season, but next season.
Yeah, when you factor in all that Tennessee's slated to lose after the 24 season on the defensive interior, for sure, with the number of super seniors they're going to have there. All right, you mentioned Junior Day may or may not happen. Give me a couple give me a couple of news items from the class of 25 at this point. I know Matt's had a couple stories up on some guys that Tennessee's garnered some early interest with. Give me the latest on some 25s.
Well, this weekend the headliner there'll be two. There'll be obviously George McIntyre will be in town, and providing what happens at the end of the week, there could be a little bit of added oomph to that, right? And then David Sanders. It's a 1A 1B, so you get in the arguably the number one offensive tackle, and then one of the top two quarterbacks in the country on your campus this coming weekend for 2025. It's a big weekend. That doesn't even count Cam Sparks and the tight end who just committed from Texas and several other solid players in the 25 class. But it all to me starts quarterback and who's protecting the quarterback, and you're getting your two of your top targets. Potentially one that could be committed to you by then if George commits by the end of the week. Again, snow can disrupt a lot of things, including announcements. But getting those two kids on campus is big here in the mid part of January.
Yep. So maybe some people need to what are the Buffalo Mafia? What they make $20 an hour to go out and shovel? Maybe Tennessee needs to get T-Dot out and clean up some roads a little bit more to the complex to get some guys here.
I'm more thinking NYC Vol and some of those guys in the mid-state need to get over there and plow the roads near Brentwood Academy to make sure an announcement goes off near the end of the week.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with weather. That's always the challenging part in the month of January. But we're going to have all of that covered for you if Tennessee does have their junior day and any other recruiting news that comes down the pike, including transfers and portal names, portal visitors, portal options, all that stuff. We're going to talk about it all day long on the General's Quarters, and we'll give you the latest update on all those guys. Lastly, as we get ready to get out the door, I want to say public congratulations to Jerod Mayo. Rob Lewis, one of your favorites, is now a head coach in the National Football League. Did you have that one pegged when he was roaming the sidelines for Tennessee coming out of high school and we dealt with his recruitment from Virginia?
No, definitely not. But I mean, he's somebody that I would have predicted would be in a pretty good spot professionally when he was 38 years old, no matter, whether it involved football or not. I mean, just always a great guy to deal with. I mean, super mature, even as an 18-year-old. And, just don't have any negatives to say about him. I can remember, Hubbard, this is kind of a minor point, but I can remember being surprised that he went 10th to the Patriots in that draft. I mean, there was almost no buzz. I mean, he was probably a first rounder, if you remember that year. I mean, he was a great player at Tennessee, but, to see him go that high, I mean, that caught me off guard. Then you see how his career unfolded, and it was pretty clear that, whether it was Belichick or whoever saw something special, in him, because that was one where they probably could have traded down and picked him up somewhere else in the first round. But, clear that they wanted him and he flourished there. And last thing for me, I'll go back. One of the best games I can remember seeing a Tennessee player play, and it was a losing effort, was in the SEC championship game. I guess it was 07. Eric Berry was a freshman, LSU, and, it didn't work out for Tennessee, but man, he was an absolute monster that night. I mean, I can just remember so many big hits from him in that game, and again, I just remember him as being a guy that was mature beyond his years, and just always a real obvious leader.
Yeah, total pro. I mean, just a pro. He was, just a no nonsense guy. I mean, it just was just show up and go to work every day, and I guess that's probably why he fit the Patriot bill the way that he did, Grant. But just showed up. I mean, there was not a lot of pomp and circumstance with him. It was just. He was going to the office and going to work, and that's the way he approached it from the time he got to Tennessee until he left.
I think it speaks to his coaching, what they think of him as a coach, because Vrabel was out there. He was a free agent. He could have been back in Foxborough by now. He's back in Foxborough earlier this season at one point, sitting with Robert Kraft. So that relationship obviously is still there, and people were stunned when he got fired. So for Jerod to get that job, I think that speaks of who he is as a coach, and I think the Patriots taking him at 10 overall. That tells you what you need to know about him as a football player. Like Rob said, they could have traded down, and nobody loves trading down or loved trading down more than Bill Belichick. So for him to have the career that he did, to go 10 overall, to go straight to coaching, to climb that ladder as quickly as he did with that organization. I mean, he was going to be a head coach somewhere. There's too many openings in this cycle for him to, he was interviewing this time a year ago for head coach openings. So for them to just go straight to him as soon as Belichick steps down. You hate to be the guy that replaces the guy, but it's a huge opportunity, and I think they moving that quickly to make him the head coach. I think that says all you need to know about it.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about where he's at in the franchise, maybe what the people within the building of the franchise thinks about him. And Austin, as much as we hear about X's and O's and everybody talks about what's on their Waffle House play sheet on the sideline, you got a guy in Detroit who's all about culture in the locker room right now, who doesn't have a play sheet. And everybody kind of joked about who he was when he got that head coaching job. And being able to manage guys in the locker rooms and create that in the locker room is something every NFL team seems to be looking for, or it seems to be more in vogue to look for that right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you have to, kind of build it how you see fit. Not everybody agrees with everybody's model, but I think being a player's coach, especially in the NFL, where let's face it, I mean, a lot of the players are between 25 and 35 years old, and they're they police themselves in so many ways. So like, to have a guy that kind of can, could put up their butt if they need to, but at the same time, it's all about the culture, them having fun, embracing the experience, the ride, the journey, getting to that destination, is something that's highly coveted. And I think that's why Vrabel, if he's smart, if he doesn't like anything that's out there, sets out the year, will be a hot commodity a year from now. It's why Dan Campbell is if the Lions had a down year and they made some crazy decision, or 2 down years, people would gobble him right back up because he's done a phenomenal job. All the biting kneecaps comments aside, the guy has stockpiled a ton of talent on his roster, young talent, and done a nice job, built Jared Goff back up. Love what their receivers do. Love their tandem at tailbacks. So I mean, this is a Detroit team that I want to continue to see win. I hated the Browns loss. You guys have heard me talk. I love teams that haven't been there in a while doing something cool. And, so I mean, I'm just kind of excited to see some of these teams, see if they can make a run, kind of keep the magic going for those respective cities.
Yeah. Well,
Jerod,
go ahead.
Jerod in New England kind of feels like DeMeco Ryans in Houston. I mean, he's a young guy. He's a guy that everybody wants the next offensive mind to be the head coach. It's okay to hire a defensive coach if you get the offensive coordinator position right. And obviously, if you strike gold in the draft, I mean, Houston had the number 2 overall pick last year, and took C.J. Stroud, and here Tennessee, the Patriots are with the number 3 overall pick in some good QBs in this draft. So it could happen that quickly, and you could have that kind of success if you strike gold with your head coach promotion and your hire and what you can do in the draft.
Yep. If Jerod Mayo is going to have a chance, they're going to have to find an answer at the quarterback spot, because
amen to that. They got to get somebody.
You don't win in that league without good quarterback play. And whether it's a young player or a veteran player that you rebuild like Goff, or it's a slow guy that you bring along like Love or whatever, I mean, you've got to have good quarterback play. And until the Patriots find some quarterback play, it doesn't matter that's why the Hall of Fame coach just got sent packing in Foxborough, because he didn't have a quarterback.
I was watching the NFL Network this morning, and one of the commentators said, in 2036, when the Packers draft a quarterback, even though Love's won a Super Bowl or 2, nobody I mean, it's unbelievable. If he ends up, again, it's 1 year, but it's his first year is better than Aaron Rodgers' first year, right? Rodgers went 6-10. This kid's made the playoffs at 9-8. Now beat Dallas. By the way, greatest stat. Green Bay has more wins in AT&T Stadium in the playoffs than Dallas does. But like, what a run. Favre to Rodgers, now to potentially Jordan Love. I mean, good grief.
It's almost like the Chicago Bears at quarterback, isn't it, Grant?
Is this why I'm on this podcast today? Was this all an elaborate ruse to get on here and talk about the Packers? I mean, I've got this stupid hat on.
We talked about.
I was sick as a dog yesterday watching it. It's going to be, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's going to play there for 15 years. They're going to draft somebody else and sit him for 3 years behind Jordan Love. There's a scene in Breaking Bad where Jesse is screaming about Walter White. He just looks up in the air and screams, he can't keep getting away with this, or something like that. That's me for the rest of my life, watching the Green Bay Packers while my joke of a franchise hasn't had a quarterback since Sid Luckman.
Well, there's a scene.
Jim McMahon. Come on, man.
There is a scene in Bruce Almighty where he's on the Maid of the Mist, and he's like, I'm wearing this stupid hat on this stupid boat. And that's where I thought you were getting ready to go.
Well,
I am wearing a stupid hat. That's for sure.
We got Jordan Love as the answer for the Packers, and the Bears have a decision to make with Justin Fields as to what in the world they're going to do there.
Trade him.
Yeah, again, in that league, it's all about one thing. It's about quarterback play because you're not going very far without good quarterback play. That is for sure.
The best podcast we've done in years, guys.
I know. Speaking of quarterback play, we sent our quarterback to the showers for the week. Eric Kane on a little R&R. He'll be back with us next week, so it'll all be
come
back.
on, Hubbard, tell the truth. Violation of team rules. Don't sugarcoat it.
Internal punishment.
If hey, he could have been like Gerald Mincey. We'd have put him out there for an extra point.
I thought he was at Minnesota Twins fantasy camp.
He went to Comic-Con to get a autograph of Kirby Puckett.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Volquest.com podcast presented by our good friends at Exterior Home Solutions. For Grant Ramey, Rob Lewis, Austin Price, and Eric Kane, wherever you're at out there, buddy. I'm Brent Hubbs. Have a great Tuesday, everybody.